is taken from a very unique letter in the New Testament, the letter to the Hebrews. Before I read it, let me offer you a short introduction of this letter. This letter was for a time mistakenly considered as the work of the Apostle Paul. And that explains why this letter was included in our New Testament. Because when they were collecting our New Testament 27 books, this letter emerged from nowhere. But at that time, very early, as you can see, probably in the 4th century AD. In those early times, this letter was believed to be written by Apostle Paul. So, since it was, the letter of Apostle Paul, so we have no doubt we include this. But later, several hundred years later, when people started to read this letter again and again, they discovered that, this letter has nothing to do with Paul, because you all know Paul's theology, what Paul was concerned about. But this letter shows no sign at all in the teachings, in theology, and everything. It has nothing to do with Apostle Paul. So the church at the time, several hundred years later after its adoption, the church discovered that, wow, we made a mistake. But what a lovely mistake, because this letter is probably one of the, in terms of Greek, in terms of its writing, it's literal, it's literate as a literature, Let's judge it by its quality as a literature. This is probably the highest quality in the whole New Testament, which means that the Greek used by the author of this unknown, the letter to the Hebrews, he is the most educated one, even higher than the Apostle Paul. So today we will try to read 2 places from this letter to the Hebrews. Chapter 1, verses 1 to 4, and chapter 2, verses 5 to 9. Chapter 1, long ago God spoke to our ancestors in many and various ways by the prophets. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by a Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom he also created the world. He is a reflection of God's glory and the exact imprint of God's very being, and he sustains all things by his powerful word. When he had made purification for sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much superior to angels as the name he has inherited is more excellent than theirs. This part of the introduction of the letter simply says that Jesus Christ is above all things, even higher than the angels. But the following section in chapter 2, we will be reading, for a short moment of time, Jesus seems to be lower than the angels. It was only after that short period of time that God decided to uplift Jesus Christ again above the angels. This is chapter 2, verses 5 to 9. Now God did not subject the coming world about which we are speaking to angels, but someone has testified somewhere. What are human beings that you are mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them? You have made them for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned them with glory and honor, subjecting all things under their feet. Now, in subjecting all things to them, God left nothing outside their control. As it is, we do not yet see everything in subjection to them, but we do see Jesus, who for a little while was made lower than the angels, now crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God, he might taste death for everyone. This concludes our reading from the New Testament. Our scripture reading from the letter to the Hebrews is one of the greatest affirmations in the Bible. Because the author says, someone has testified somewhere what are human beings that you are mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them. You have made them for a little while lower than the angels. You have crowned them with glory and honor, subjecting all things under their feet. Now, in subjecting all things to them, God left nothing outside his control. I say this, we do not yet see everything in subjecting to them, but we do see Jesus, the greatest affirmation of humankind in the whole book, Old Testament and New Testament, in the whole book of the Bible. Let me tell you a secret. I take great comfort every time when I read this passage. I take great comfort. Because the author quotes Psalm 8, the passage I just read to you. Someone has testified somewhere, what are human beings that you are mindful of them, or mortals that you care for them? That particular phrase, sentence, is taken from Psalm 8, Old Testament. That author is quoting Psalm 8. But look at what he said. He says, someone has testified somewhere. Do you know what is happening here? This author of the letter to the Hebrews cannot remember where that particular passage is located in the Bible. Have that ever happened to you? A familiar phrase or even a passage, you cannot know, you cannot remember where it is located in the book of the Bible. It is very embarrassing. I mean, to this author. He is trying to quote somewhere in the Bible, but he does not know where. He can only say someone has testified somewhere. Actually, he should say, the author of Psalm 8 has said this. What is human being? But you are mindful of them. But he does not say this. He said someone has testified somewhere because he cannot remember where that particular passage is located. Well, the reason why I take great comfort in reading this is that because that particular thing, the same thing happened to me all the time. Very often I do not remember, even as a pastor. Even if I, consider myself, very well versed in the Bible, still I cannot remember some of the passages in the Bible. A young, earnest Christian once came up to me and said, Pastor William, your idea about Christian devotion is well supported, well testified in Leviticus 6:12. I had no idea what he was talking about because I did not remember what Leviticus 6:12 is saying. So I can only reply, well, thank you very much. You are certainly right. Because I do not know what the passage is all about. Well, knowing that the author to the Hebrews did not recognize, did not remember Psalm 8. When he was trying to quote Psalm 8, that gives me great comfort. Because I'm a person who must struggle constantly with imperfections. The author's imperfection yields great hope that you and I can communicate God's message in spite of our imperfections. Brothers and sisters, what this passage is trying to say to us is that we are created for greatness. Humankind is created for greatness. For a little while, the author says, we are less than the angels. For a little while, just for a little while. But someday, in God's providence, we will be greater than we ever imagined we would be. I believe we can see this in arts, in science, and most recently, in the medical field. Roughly, just 1 year after the first case of COVID-19 was identified, multiple vaccines with demonstrated safety and efficacy, are available. Just within 1 year, multiple vaccines with demonstrated safety and efficacy are available. Isn't that amazing? The author says that we are created for greatness. I think the recent breakthrough in the medical field, the vaccine, certainly corroborates that statement. Human beings are created for greatness. But human greatness does not confine itself just to the 20th or the 21st century. 800 years ago, in an achievement that was entirely, that was every bit as marvelous as the invention of computer chips and COVID-19 vaccines, every bit as magnificent as those inventions 800 years ago. Architects and craftsmen at the time, 800 years ago, discovered ways to allow cathedrals, church buildings, to climb higher and higher. 800 years ago, they started this movement called Cathedral Movement. They started to build churches, with steeple towers, higher and higher. They discovered ways to allow walls and ceilings to rise to unprecedented, height. And they allowed huge spaces within those walls into which you can place, stained glasses and filter the light into the sacred space. The cathedral was to the age of faith, but today's computer and vaccine have been for each one of us. But every now and then, I must confess, every now and then someone will criticize the construction of cathedrals. Some years ago, a friend and I went into a cathedral. And my friend looked up into the cathedral's high ceiling, much higher than this, the high ceiling, and said to me, well, William, there is a lot of wasted space up there. They could drop the ceiling and build a second story and rent the space out. In that way, they can make more money. And I told him, do you know, there was a time in architecture, actually a period in architecture, that said all spaces in buildings must be in human dimension. All architecture, all buildings must be in human dimension. And my friend asked me what was meant by human dimension. I said, what they meant by human dimension was 10 feet ceiling, 10 feet tall. I think it is higher than this. Brothers and sisters, what is the human dimension according to the Bible? Human dimension according to the Bible. 10 feet ceiling? No. The author of Hebrews tells us this morning what human dimension means in the Bible. Let me repeat that again. You have made them for God. You have made them for a little while lower than the angels. But later you have crowned them with glory and honor, subjecting all things under their feet. This is human dimension according to the Bible. Our final destiny, as I said, for a little while, we are lower than the angel, but our final destiny is greater even than the angels. To be greater than we could ever imagine. That is our destiny as human beings. Human dimension in Bible's standard means infinite space, unlimited ceiling, not just 10 feet tall, 100 feet tall. It is no limit. Human life, according to the Bible, is not bound by this space and time. We can actually soar to dimensions beyond what we can see and experience, even in this real life, beyond. Brothers and sisters, as you know, today is the Worldwide Communion Sunday, emphasizing our spiritual oneness with Christians all around the world. The mystery of the sacrament not only creates a table that encircles this world, but also a table that extends into the heavens to include all the saints. Not just everybody in this room, not even just everybody, outside this room, but even extends to include all the saints in heaven. So next time when you walk into this sanctuary, please do not complain that the ceiling is too high or there is a wasted space in this building. No, because the high ceiling is meant to remind each of us our potential as created human dimension, according to the Bible, is unlimited. We are created, we are meant for greatness. And I hope every time you gather at the Lord's table, you remember that this table extends even to include all the saints in heaven. So don't let anything in this world lower your faith, the ceiling of your faith. Because according to this author, the author to the letter of Hebrews, according to this author, each one of us as Christians must have a high ceiling faith. And better, the ceiling should be unlimited. Today we celebrate the Holy Communion with brothers and sisters in this room, through this, electronic device and all everywhere in the world. But with all the saints in heaven, we should have a no limit, high ceiling faith. Now I will turn to the Taiwanese congregation.